You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support this show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
Why, hello. I'm Sam Steeder, and this is the Majority Report. Today is Wednesday, January 16th, 2019. We are playing today's show. We are playing a live show that we did just this Sunday, January 13th. Fairly up to date, certainly enjoyable. So enjoy today's Majority Report. It is from Sunday. It was a live show that we recorded at the Bell House in Brooklyn, New York.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Steeder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Sunday, January 13th, 2019. My name is Sam Steeder. That's the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting really live from the Bell House in Brooklyn, New York. On the program today, the shutdown, the longest in U.S. history, also illegal. How many days until the air travel comes to a standstill, and Trump and the Republicans increasingly getting the blame as the Freedom Caucus says no. What happened? What did you do? Oh, sorry. Well, you know, the news. Thank you. And meanwhile, Donald Trump really didn't want a record of his tete-a-tete with Putin. Tulsi Gabbard declares, Julian Castro declares, Tucker Carlson still a jerk, and all that shit. Folks, welcome. Welcome. You may recognize some of the folks here. To my right, Jamie Pack. Also to my right, literally, of course, not metaphorically, these guys, Michael Brooks. To my left, Matt Leck. And standing in the back, near a video camera, there he is, Brendan Finn. You may know him as Patrick. All right, folks. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. Really, this afternoon. Really appreciate you coming. Okay, now we can cut the music. Really appreciate everybody coming out. We've got hopefully a good show planned for you. You know, it's weird to do this on a Sunday because I think I've only done this on a Sunday one other day in the 16 years, more or less, that I've been doing this. And that was 2 years ago here at the New York Podcast Festival. But I want to thank the Brooklyn PodFest for having us here and all the sponsors. You may have heard up front we're on Pandora now, so if you listen to stuff on Pandora or not, a great way to listen to the podcast. So here's what we're going to do. We do have a guest. He is a good friend of mine. He's going to come out a little bit later. He's going to. I don't know why you laughed at that, but you guys can pick up your microphones.
You ready for us?
No, and
No.
no, but.
Can I say what I think about this?
I said, Michael, you could pick it up. I didn't say talk into it yet.
In steps.
And at the end, also, we want to set aside some time for some question and answers. Folks have traveled from God knows where. And
IQ, property rights. Just load them up. And we will go over an hour over schedule.
Exactly.
Sam has a torturous, exhausting, generally painful engagement.
We're going to take questions, but we're going to allow anybody who has some very localized issues for places that are not here to go first. And
Yeah.
so
If there is a city council election in rural Indiana.
that's a little broad, but something a little bit more specific than just a city council election across the country. But all right, let's just update you on the shutdown. It is now the longest in history, and we have never gotten to this place where federal workers have not received a paycheck. That has been essentially the drop dead date in the past, and because of labor law essentially, and out of court rulings that came out in 2013. The fact that there are people working, specifically the ones who are forced to work, hundreds of thousands of them, and are not receiving a paycheck is illegal, and that means nothing now. We're just living in an era where the idea, there's a lot of like you and what army is a big issue. Donald Trump gives no, I guess we can say this, we're live here, it's the 18 and over fucks, about what constitutes the law, and apparently Mitch McConnell doesn't either. And this has been the problem since the middle of 2016, I would say, that the mainstream media, and to a certain extent the Democrats, are just simply not holding Paul Ryan's gone now, but Mitch McConnell responsible enough for these things.
Cuck Schumer.
Cuck Schumer is a big...
It's true. It's really
the
true.
Public workers can always go on strike. They don't like how they're being treated, right?
That's right.
Core brands.
They can. That's true. And
They should.
Except in places where they can't.
Some TSA workers have walked out.
we're starting to see that in terms of TSA workers. I mean, those people who are deemed essential services, I don't know actually if they can go on strike without it being illegal.
Yeah, that was a leading question.
Yes, but I suspect we're going to start to see more work stoppages, and we're going to start to see people just basically leave. I mean, right now it's the TSA. They had to shut down one terminal in Miami because of the TSA. I think if we see this start going on, you're going to start to see FAA controllers.
Muslims being able to fly more easily.
Exactly. There's definitely some upsides.
Leave the belt on, too. Let's go.
That actually did happen to my friend the other day on his way back from L.A. He's brown. He has a beard. He said they didn't even bother to racially profile him.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
That's the upside. The dropping the sort of like standard FDA inspections, that could be the downside. So, frankly, we've talked about this on the show. I think Mitch McConnell is terrified of a primary challenge, and so he's not going to, it's going to take a long time before he decides to allow a vote in the Senate. People forget, in 2016, he was enemy number one of the Republican base, was talking about Mitch McConnell as a huge, huge sellout, and so I think he's terrified. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, we talked about David Perdue, I think it was on Friday or Thursday. Time is dilated, as the saying goes. And Stacey Abrams was visiting Capitol Hill on Friday, talking to Schumer and others, ostensibly about a run in Georgia. I don't know if that was, performative to put some pressure on the Georgia senators, but very well may be. But we're going to start to see as this drags on because we're in new territory here. We've never had a shutdown that's lasted this long. The implications of it are going to resonate for a while. I think we still have 25,000 federal workers who are waiting to get back pay from 2013. So, and that court case that made them get that extra time and time and a half for overtime when they worked because they were essential workers in 2013 is the basis of people's assessment that what's going on now, not paying people who are showing up to work, is illegal under U.S. labor law. So, that's where we are in terms of the shutdown, and it's really just a question of putting more pressure on your senators. And even if you have even if your senator is Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand, the more that they hear from you folks, the better. And we now have the polling in there, which is going to help in terms of putting pressure on those Republican senators, because they've got to go to Mitch McConnell and just say, you're going to lose your caucus because it's starting to kill us. And the one thing I would caution, though, as these polling comes out, the top line is that Republicans are going to get the blame big time for this. Even for those people who think the Democrats should not, the wall should not be built. Most of them are either Democrats or independents. Incidentally, the number of Republicans who think the wall should be built has gone up in the past 6 to 8 months by almost 12 percentage points. So this is the dynamic in this country. They'll
come to their senses, though.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Which one of Trump's very logical arguments do you think changed their minds?
All of them.
It is an increase of 12 points since January 2018. And so you're looking at a shrinking group of people who are becoming more sure that they represent the country, is really what it comes down to. And this is going to be the dynamic, I suspect, going forward, unless there's a big change somewhere. And I don't know what that change could be. It's possible Donald Trump would be like, this is actually going to be infrastructure week, and we're going to do this. And that's it. But probably not. We're all waiting for the day that he becomes the president. And the one thing that strikes out in this strikes out to me in this latest poll is that of 54% of Americans who oppose the wall, 27% say Democrats should continue to resist Trump's demands for $5.7 billion. 23% said they should compromise with the president. So,
ooh, that poll sounds very promising. I don't know. Is there any way we could do a little bit of an inheritance tax relief for my daughter?
Exactly.
Let's do a Facebook poll and follow up.
Exactly.
My daughter told me that there's a lot of room for negotiation.
Have you seen the Baileys post on Facebook?
I'll have to ask them. They've been posting like crazy. A man who's...
I should just say, Schumer lives not far from here.
That's true.
And I'm just scanning the audience now. Super convenient for him to drop by. Whenever we do anything that is outside the office, I always leave a ticket for him. And just...
Protect your neck, Michael.
Yeah, maybe he picks it up.
Protect your neck.
He picks it up. Maybe he doesn't.
That heat's
I don't
for
know.
Sam.
But so that's where we are, and I don't know. I would just taking the temperature of people in the room, because we never get a chance to do this with 350 people in the studio. I'm curious if people would be fine with, let's just call it $10 billion for the wall, if we could get citizenship for DACA, let's say.
What about also continuing protected status for Haitians as well?
All right, let's just phrase that the opposite. Who's against that? It seems like, I would say 90% of you cannot commit to either position. That's what it sounds like. All right, well, that was interesting. I mean...
they all support what I said.
I'm glad we did. And the interesting thing is that by now, I think we thought, frankly, I thought it Tuesday night, and then I thought it would be Friday night that Trump would declare a national emergency, build the wall. I think there were people in the Democratic Party who were like, that seems to be the best case scenario in some ways, because he builds the wall and then he's like, I don't care about the budget. And then the continuing resolution passes, the government's funded, and then we just wait for, President Castro to declare a national emergency and nationalize the oil refineries or whatever it is.
Right. Oh, the real President Castro.
Right. No, I was talking Raul Castro.
Oh, the real Castro. Okay.
And
the Castro I like.
But apparently the Freedom Caucus had the same. For them, it wasn't a dream. For them, it was a nightmare. And the Freedom Caucus basically came back and said, wait a second, this may blow up in our face. And so it appears that some of the most conservative members of the Republicans have told Trump, don't do this, because you will be setting potentially a bad precedent. It's an interesting precedent when you think about it, because the Republicans, and there's a downside to this, the only thing that they would declare a national emergency for is probably just to literally start the camps, right? That's what was the...
A little bit of a downside.
Right, it's a little bit of a downside. But there's nothing affirmative that they, and maybe somebody could come up with something, but there's not as big ticket items affirmative that I think the left would want. For instance, a national emergency to deal with climate change, a national emergency to deal with the fact that tens of thousands of people die a year because there's no health insurance. There's some big ticket items that if the president had that ability and we had the right president, might work out pretty well for the left.
Right. And like Julian Castro said, brain power is the currency of the 21st century.
That's right.
And so dynamic leadership.
If only there was somebody who might run for president who actually considers those things a crisis.
That's true. And
I don't know who.
We don't know yet who that's going to be. But
fucking Tulsi Gabbard.
Well, let's actually get to this. So, there was a couple of things that I really felt like we wanted to do for this show, right? The essence of what the show was, but we couldn't find like a fresh Dave Rubin clip.
Who knew?
To play. What's that?
Who knew?
Yeah, exactly.
How many people here are thinking about shooting up a Pilates studio?
Right.
It's Dave's new stand-up.
And we have and we have some other clips that are sort of like not that are a little bit more evergreen, and we will get to those. But we were going to. I was just going to mention that Tulsi Gabbard is running. We've talked about her in the past. Julian Castro is also running. He has come out with, again, generalities, but they are pretty. He's going to run in a left lane. Universal pre-K, not a dime in PAC money, Medicare for all. We haven't heard his definition. Rejoin the Paris Accord on the first day in office. That's not really that big of a deal. 5 years after we got into it. But expand college.
His college proposal is trash.
Yeah.
The other stuff is good.
But he's going to
college. If you get a B+ and you meet with a counselor,
right, exactly.
You can get a deferred loan to work.
It involves a rope
at an
course.
Amazon fulfillment center.
Yeah.
It's not good.
You gotta pass a ropes course first, and there's a trust.
You have to cross the route his mom did to get into the country.
Oh, we're going to take your college and make it wider.
Right. He's going to involve some type of major housing investment of some kind based on his past. That could involve a lot of private equity, but, and a Green New Deal, which is, so there's a lot of value in at least a guy like this signing on to some of these things. And it's interesting. It gives you a sense of where the left is. But here's another sense of where some of the left is, too. Tulsi Gabbard announced that she is running. And, we've mentioned on this program, like, I think the threshold from when I think someone's stuff in someone's background is problematic changes based upon what position they're going for.
You fucking smeared her.
Right. You run for Congress. There's 435 of them. Is that what it is?
You would know that.
And 452, whatever, somewhere around there. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's so many I can barely remember the specific number. So if you run for Congress, the threshold. But if you're running for president and you belong to a hate group, or you speak in front of a hate group, and there's a little bit of cult in your background, and maybe your foreground, I start to get a little nervous. Like, I don't want anybody from the fellowship to be in the presidency either, right? And so, but there's other people who have different opinions, and because
some people who oppose fucking war,
right? I have some issues with her.
This clip is rich.
All right, well, let's just play this because this is really part of our core brand proposition, too. I give you Jimmy Dore upon the announcement of Tulsi Gabbard.
Have you seen The Intercept and the Humanist Report coverage of Tulsi? I love Tulsi, but if you read these pieces, you will learn some uncomfortable truth that true lefty indie and journalists have pointed out. Looking forward to it, Lorraine. We're all about reading about Tulsi and learning more about her. Because Tulsi identifies Hindu, I need to hear from her about her stance on Modi fascism, Islamophobia, imperialism in Kashmir, and whether she agrees morally with the caste system that is incredibly sexist against women. Thanks for the donation. I don't have any answers.
I can tell you one thing. If there's one thing I couldn't care less about, it's what's happening in India. Is that wrong of me to not care? I mean, how does that affect me? There's lots of bad governments all around the world. Why should I give a shit about another one? I don't understand. Right? Isn't that like saying, hey, Assad's not a good guy, and so we should have troops there? I don't understand. None of them are good guys. Look what fucking Israel's doing to medics on their border. That's our ally. Turkey's our ally. Look what we're doing in Yemen with our ally Saudi Arabia. I mean, so this idea of somehow the people they got her because she likes a guy, and we're in fucking bed with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, no.
That's just ridiculous. So you're going to have a different litmus test now for her than you have for every other fucking president, including Barack Obama?
So why do you oppose all those other governments, fucking moron?
Why do you care what happens in Yemen?
Hold on one second.
That is immoral.
I just want to make sure
stupid.
That's not their version of their parody show, right?
I would never say anything that fucking stupid.
We just couldn't change the logo. The issue's not that she's Hindu. I don't think she deserves any specific extra scrutiny but it's what she has done and her
Sam
affiliation.
You cannot trust the Hare Krishnas. They're at the airport. They'll try to kidnap you. There's a nice boy in my neighborhood in Worcester, and he became a Hare Krishna. And he just ate vegetables and never called his mom. Do you see?
It was very, very... That stuck in my mom's craw for a long time when that kid... Like literally 30 years later, be careful at the airport. But aside from that, I don't know really how to respond to something like that, where you just the desire for Tulsi Gabbard to be somebody that she's not is extremely intense, and
well, she does go surfing. That makes you a progressive.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's 3:00.
Can we get that in the studio? Could you imagine if somebody's like, "Oh, hi, I wanted to talk about your view of first principle." It's like, it's 2:45. Put down the phone, Sam. Let your people leave. Stop torturing them.
Matt with the drop.
I just, to actually articulate those words, like, I'm surprised he didn't say, I don't give a fuck about what's going on in India, and I don't wake up in the morning and turn to the India section of the paper.
I do.
But I know you do. But this is pretty stunning stuff. And I think, this is, I think an example of what a concern that we've had for a long time at our show and why we spend so much time sort of policing, frankly, Jimmy's show. I don't think it's terribly effective. That video will get 150,000 views, and there'll be a lot of people out there who, Jimmy Reefer Cake will send in a song next week that will sing about...
How many people think we should ban Jimmy Reefer Cake?
Not that many.
Wow, that's not as overwhelming as you. How many people don't think we should ban him? Wow.
Again, there's the 90% in the middle of everything.
Yes.
That just are like, whatever, just go on with the show.
Just fucking clap.
Exactly.
He's also a guy who's done a million videos on Syria, and a couple weeks ago was just like Rojava. The Kurds? I didn't fucking know that. He literally didn't know about the Kurdish areas. Anyways.
He's not a leftist.
He's not a leftist.
Seriously.
I think he is ideologically left. I think he's just not somebody who likes to read.
I think he... Are you saying he's a dum-dum?
I think he can read, but I'm not sure.
No, people complain about leftist on leftist violence when we make fun of Jimmy Dore. If you don't care about people all over the world, including on the other side of this bullshit thing we call borders, you're not a leftist. Sorry.
Well, maybe this is a good time, when we're talking about identities, to share something with you. Folks, there's been a lot of talk about this, and to have an audience of this size, I want to share with you something that's been on my mind for some time. And we're going to play a video that I think, I have a little bit of an announcement to make. Here it is. Oh, sorry.
And that's the show. Hi, I'm Sam Cedar. Many people have been asking me about what my future plans are going to be. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to make an announcement. I have decided that I will be starting an exploratory committee to look into running for the 2020 Libertarian presidential nomination. And I'm also starting an exploratory committee to look into the 2022 senatorial primary nomination for the Democratic Party. And also, I will be looking into an exploratory committee to look into running for comptroller in Columbia County, New York State, as a moderate Republican. So there it is. For the next 2 to 6 years, I'm going to go on a listening tour to listen to you, the various voters, to tell me what I should do. So until then, I hope to see you, or rather, hear you.
Ronald Reagan already got, there it is. Get the chuck out. Get the chuck out. Yeah, I had to stand out. This is Ronald Reagan sent this to the office. And, yeah, there it is. And basically, for me, my calculus is if someone sends me a banner that suggests I run for something, then I'll run for it. So that's basically it. That's how it works. All right, I want to talk about this. We've been talking about this in the office for a couple of days, and it has actually gotten more attention in the right-wing media than it has anywhere else, and it's Tucker Carlson. Exactly. But oddly enough, Tucker is, and we've got probably too much of this video. He did a 15-minute monologue on Fox News at 8 p.m. Does he do this show?
I thought he was, he's 8, yep.
And it is a critique of the market. And so it's sort of fascinating because I'm not sure that it's important at all, but it also could be.
I think the fact that the guy is able to articulate these arguments and then latch them on to like white nationalism is actually pretty important.
Yeah, there's some scary precedent for that, incidentally, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But let's. This is the first clip. What he starts talking about Mitt Romney's critique op-ed the other day in the Washington Post, I think it was, of Donald Trump, where Mitt Romney takes, I think it was about 500 words, to say that Donald Trump is super rude, but I'm going to vote for everything that comes down the pike that is even remotely close to what he wants.
Exactly.
And Tucker takes issue not with his critique of Trump as being rude, essentially, but takes issue with what is basically the Republican agenda.
Corporate tax cuts are also popular in Washington, and Romney is strongly on board with those, too. His piece throws a rare compliment to Trump for cutting the corporate rate a year ago. That's not surprising. Romney spent the bulk of his business career at a firm called Bain Capital. Bain Capital all but invented what is now a familiar business strategy. Take over an existing company for a short period of time, cut costs by firing employees, run up the debt, extract the wealth, and move on, sometimes leaving retirees without their earned pensions. Romney became fantastically rich doing this. Meanwhile, a remarkable number of the companies are now bankrupt or extinct. This is the private equity model. A ruling class sees nothing wrong with it. It's how they run the country. Mitt Romney refers to unwavering support for a finance-based economy and an internationalist foreign policy as the mainstream Republican view. And he's right about that. For generations, Republicans have considered it their duty to make the world safe for banking, while simultaneously prosecuting ever more foreign wars. Modern Democrats generally support those goals enthusiastically. There are signs, however, that most people do not support this agenda, and not just here in America. In countries around the world, France, Brazil, Sweden, the Philippines, Germany, many others, voters suddenly are backing candidates and ideas that would have been unimaginable just a decade ago. These are not isolated events. What you're watching is entire populations revolting against leaders who refuse to improve their lives. Something like this has been happening in our country for the past 3 years. Donald Trump rode a surge of popular discontent all the way to the White House. Does he understand the political revolution that he harnessed? Can he reverse the economic and cultural trends that are destroying America? Those are open questions. But they're less relevant than we think. At some point, Donald Trump will be gone. The rest of us will be gone too. The country will remain. What kind of country will it be then? How do we want our grandchildren to live? Those are the only questions that matter. The answer to them used to be obvious. The overriding goal for America is more prosperity, meaning cheaper consumer goods. But is that still true? Does anyone still believe that cheaper iPhones or more Amazon deliveries of plastic garbage from China are going to make us happy? They haven't so far. A lot of Americans are drowning in stuff, and yet drug addiction and suicide are depopulating large parts of the country. Anyone who thinks the health of a nation can be summed up in GDP is an idiot. The goal for America is both simpler and more elusive than mere prosperity. It's happiness. There are a lot of ingredients in being happy. Dignity, purpose, self-control, independence, above all, deep relationships with other people. Those are the things that you want for your children. They're what our leaders should want for us and would want if they cared. But our leaders don't care.
Sort of fucks with your head a little bit, doesn't it? Right? Because he gets sort of vacillating back and forth between this whiny, entitled guy and then saying stuff like, oh, shit, yeah, no, he's right.
Shouldn't we prioritize friendship?
That was quite the pivot when he went to fascists in Brazil.
Yeah, that really was the giveaway. Brazil was the tell.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of these things that he drops in at certain moments, right? Where it's sort of, he's going down a path and then he sort of and that's what's interesting about all of this on some level. At the end of the day, and we're going to play a couple more of these clips, at the end, there's a rich history of this. Sometimes it gets pretty ugly. But then he goes on to say that our leaders don't care. It's just a weird, at the end, I mean, if you follow this, he is trying to establish, I guess you could call it the patriarchy or sort of the primary building block for authoritarianism on some level. So it's all about these leaders who have betrayed us in some fashion, right? You can hear some distant echoes of this stuff. Here is, he goes on to say that that Democrats / libertarians, apparently most of the libertarians are in the Democratic Party in
totally
Tucker's.
Classical liberals.
There's a lot of classical liberals.
Interested in ideas.
And social conservatives have had sort of two critiques that have come from a different place but ended up in the same area, which is that economics and culture are separate. Here, play number 2.
Yet the pathologies of modern rural America are familiar to anyone who visited downtown Baltimore in the 1980s. Stunning out-of-wedlock birth rates, high male unemployment, a terrifying drug epidemic. 2 different worlds, similar outcomes. How did this happen? Well, you'd think our ruling class would be deeply interested in knowing the answer, but mostly they're not. They don't have to be interested. It's easier to import foreign labor to take the place of native-born Americans who are slipping behind.
Nice.
But Republicans now represent rural voters. They ought to be interested. And here's a big part of the answer. Male wages declined. Manufacturing, a male-dominated industry, all but disappeared over the course of a generation. All that remained in many places were the schools and the hospitals, and both of them are traditional employers of women. In many areas, women suddenly made more than men. Now, before you applaud that as a victory for feminism, consider some of the effects. Study after study has shown that when men make less than women, women generally don't want to marry them. Now, maybe they should want to marry them, but they don't. Over big populations, this causes a drop in marriage, a spike in out-of-wedlock births, and all the familiar disasters that inevitably follow. More drug and alcohol abuse, higher incarceration rates, fewer families formed in the next generation. This is not speculation. It's not propaganda from the evangelicals. It's social science. We know it's true. Rich people know it best of all. That's why they get married before they have kids.
So give everybody
that model
healthcare,
works.
asshole.
But increasingly, marriage is a luxury only the affluent in America can afford. And yet, and here's the bewildering and infuriating part, those very same affluent married people, the ones who make virtually all the decisions in our society, are doing pretty much nothing to help the people below them get and stay married.
What have you done, Sam? This whole thing is a sham.
It's a sham.
When are you going to find Matt and Michael some wives, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So, there's a lot to unpack here. Part of it is that a problem doesn't get real until it starts affecting white people, according to Tucker. That's one of the problems. And his whole marriage calculation seems a little bit muddled. It is having kids is expensive. There's some things that we could do in terms of broadly speaking, some government programs, but we're going to wait until we get to the end where he announces apparently there's no way to help those people.
Right. There isn't like a whole obvious set of policies that would take the problem off of the table immediately.
There's no examples in the world.
Wealth.
It's completely,
right.
We have no idea how to get there.
We have no clue.
Well, this is what's so creepy about Tucker Carlson, because there's always a grain of truth in what he's saying. But then his prescription to solve the problems is way the wrong way.
Now,
but even there, you know what that actually reminds me of? You remember Waiting for Superman?
Yes.
Right? So that's like peak Obama neoliberal school propaganda. And the major thing in that movie, they say, is it's not that Scarsdale had expensive, great public schools because they're all loaded. The South Bronx had schools that were in tougher shape because of class and race and redistribution. It was that Scarsdale has amazing neighborhoods because the schools were awesome. And it just happened. He's reverse engineering the after effect of a social problem to be the cause. And they did that in the Obama era.
In terms of education.
With schools. Everybody accepted that kind of delusional second order thinking.
Now, here is this clip is a little bit less relevant, but it's a lot more fun in this monologue. And it's also sort of what I think is going to keep it's hard to know what Tucker's up to when you hear this clip. This is clip number 3 of this. Yes.
Speak out against the ugliest parts of our financial system. Not all commerce is good. Why is it defensible to loan people money they can't possibly repay, or charge them interest that impoverishes them? Payday loan outlets in poor neighborhoods collect 400% annual interest. Are we okay with that? We should not be. Libertarians tell us that's how markets work, consenting adults making voluntary decisions about how to live their lives. Okay, but it's also disgusting.
All right, pause it.
If you care about...
Yeah, he's totally nailing it.
Well,
he's totally nailing this part.
Now, his 4-part series on the way that Mick Mulvaney was pulling apart the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was devastating. Unfortunately, they never aired. You got to be a deep, deep Tucker member to get access to that material. They have a special Patreon where they lock that up. There was a lot of inroads made. Both statutorily in terms of regulation about that. I don't remember him complaining about it, but it's nice to know that he's there now that there's no way any of that is going to be held to account, at least under this administration. But watch where he goes here. This is an interesting turn.
Okay, but it's also disgusting. If you care about America, you ought to oppose the exploitation of Americans. Whether it's happening in the inner city or on Wall Street.
What happens in India?
And by the way, if you really loved your fellow Americans, as our leaders should, it would break your heart to see them high all the time, which they are. A huge number of our kids, especially our boys, are smoking weed constantly. You may not realize that because new technology has made it all but odorless, but it's everywhere. And that's not an accident.
No, wait a second. We got to go back a little bit. So we have a massive opioid epidemic in this country. That is a function of a pharmaceutical company and the entire supply chain delivery mechanism that was corrupt to the core, illicit, and just beyond reprehensible. They should all be literally charged with manslaughter, if not maybe second-degree murder.
Or summarily
But somehow it's the odorless pot that really gets it.
Can I just say, though, following Tucker, I look out on all of you and feeling the love we have for you, I'm incredibly sad. This really high audience.
All right, just go back just a little bit because
Matt Leck is smoking weed right now.
Matt Leck makes me depressed every hour. Water.
It's invisible.
Especially our boys are smoking weed constantly. You may not realize that because new technology has made it all but odorless, but it's everywhere. And that's not an accident. Once our leaders understood they could get rich from marijuana became ubiquitous. In many places, tax-hungry politicians have legalized or decriminalized it. Former Speaker of the House Jon Benjamin now lobbies for the marijuana industry. His fellow Republicans seem fine with that. Oh, but it's better for you than alcohol, they tell us. Maybe. Who cares?
He could tell you that. Jon Boehner could definitely vouch.
Yeah. That's why when you see Boehner now, he's not weeping anymore. He's high.
Yeah, he evened his emotional state out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Alcohol, they tell us. Maybe. Who cares? Talk about missing the point. Try having dinner with a 19-year-old who's been smoking weed. The life is gone. Passive, flat, trapped in their own heads. Do you want that for your kids?
Try doing a show every day with a 50-year-old who just smoked weed. Trapped in his own head.
How many times is Tucker having dinner with a high 19-year-old guy?
Inquiring minds want to know.
We don't know what he does in his free time.
Well, I mean, he could have it's conceivable he has a 19-year-old kid. I bet you he does. But, just deal with it at home, dude.
This segment is dedicated to you tonight, son.
Right.
You know me, Dad.
When I'm done talking about the fucking gypsies, it's about you.
Do you people have any idea what it's like how kids fight over a beanbag chair? That's what my past 2 days have been about.
Who won?
They eat all your snacks.
They both have won. I'm out of the house.
Right.
Just so I don't have to hear them yell about the beanbag chair. All right, continue.
Heirs. Talk about missing the point. Try having dinner with a 19-year-old who's been smoking weed. The life is gone. Passive, flat, trapped in their own heads. Do you want that for your kids? Of course not. Then why are our leaders pushing it on us? You know the reason. Because they don't care about us. When you care about people, you do your best to...
Okay,
that was a little almost like white Malcolm X-y. That was so weird. He was like,
"They want you pacified."
Right. It is
bizarre.
That was a bizarre turn. Everybody's getting high and they're flaccid at
He's
dinner.
got to look for the non sequitur.
He's a real good pivoter.
All right, and then he
student loans, which is why I want to talk about weed.
And he finishes with a direct attack on the market. I mean,
I'm back on board.
Yeah, let's watch it.
Nothing divides us like the perception that some people are getting special treatment. In our country, some people definitely are getting special treatment. Republicans should oppose that with everything they have. So the question is, what kind of country
now
do
pause
you
it for
want
1
to live
second,
in?
because I should say that just before this, he said that elites. He started to, he does everything very quickly, and so it's vague enough that it can mean a couple of different things to different people. But at one point, right before that, he says, elites are just letting people into colleges based upon what they look like and blah blah blah. And wait, what? Are elites just letting people into colleges based on what they look like? And he sort of he pivots here to talking about this notion of special treatment. And a big part of the problem with special treatment is the complete lack of accountability for his folks. I mean, the people he used to work with at Fox, for one, the President of the United States. I mean, there's a lot of different, special treatment comes in a lot of different forms. When he says special treatment, we may hear that one, but I think his audience hears another one. But continue.
The question is, what kind of country do you want to live in? Well, a fair country, a decent country, a cohesive country, a country whose leaders don't accelerate the forces of change purely for their own profit and amusement, a country you might recognize when you're old, A country that listens to young people who don't live in Brooklyn.
Not so slow.
Right.
A country where you can make a solid living outside of the big cities. A country where Lewiston, Maine seems almost as important as the west side of Los Angeles. A country where environmentalism means
no,
getting out.
I should remind you that exactly. This whole formulation of normal people.
I went to college in Lewiston, Maine, and it's very lacking in normal people. I mean, I love the place.
Not to
I should also like to remind Tucker that per capita, Lewiston, Maine gets a lot more representation in the Senate, let's say, than folks living in California.
I was going to say, no one in a city has ever struggled to make a living, Tucker.
That doesn't happen.
Exactly.
All right, but you go back, because I just get fascinated by this use of normal people. Like, I've used that as a joke to say, like, we need a normal president, not a black guy and a woman. We need a normal president, right? And this guy's using it, and I'm not sure exactly what he means. Well, I do know what he means.
Right. I think he's using it in a really similar way.
A country where you can make a solid living outside of the big cities. A country where Lewiston, Maine seems almost as important as the west side of Los Angeles. A country where environmentalism means getting outside and picking up the trash. A clean, orderly, stable country that respects itself. And above all, a country where normal people with an average education who grew up no place special can get married and have happy kids and repeat unto the generations. A country that actually cares about families. The building block of everything. What will it take to get a country like that? Leaders who want it. For now, those leaders will have to be Republicans.
Socialism.
There's no option at this point. But first, Republican leaders will have to acknowledge that market capitalism is not a religion. Market capitalism is a tool, like a staple gun or a toaster. You'd have to be a fool to worship it. Our system was created by human beings for the benefit of human beings. We do not exist to serve markets, just the opposite. Any economic system that weakens and destroys families is not worth having. A system like that is the enemy of a healthy society. Internalizing all this will not be easy for Republican leaders. They'll have to unlearn decades of bumper sticker talking points and corporate propaganda. They'll likely lose donors in the process. They'll be criticized. Libertarians are certain to call any deviation from market fundamentalism a form of socialism. That's a lie. Socialism is a disaster. It does not work. In fact, it's what we should be working desperately to avoid. But socialism is exactly what we're going to get, and very soon, unless a group of responsible people in our political system
From your mouth to God's
reforms
ears,
the American
Tucker.
economy in a way that protects normal people. If you want to put America first, you've got to put its families first.
I love the juxtaposition. Like,
Socialism, disaster. Fascism, really good.
Right.
Fascism works really well.
There's not many places for him to go after this, is there?
do you remember when...
It's national socialism, right? Not real socialism. It's like, social democracy plus white supremacy equals what he wants.
It's just about the families.
Yeah. Do you remember when it came out that Jeff Sessions did have a problem with the Klan? Do you guys remember why he had a problem with the Klan? Because they smoke weed?
Too much weed.
That monologue was like a high Klan session. Look, we're not in touch with each other enough, man. Markets to serve us.
It's weird because he is identifying real problems, and some of these are real problems with liberalism and with things that Democrats and Republicans have done. Like, we have these stingy little means-tested programs. Like, I recently talked to someone who's an expert on the welfare rights movement of the 60s and 70s. Government workers would come to women's houses, mostly single black moms, and if they found a man's slippers, they would kick them off of welfare. But the answer to that is universal programs and more benefits. It's not to take them away.
Or we could do a Facebook opt-in. And if you're single, there could be a sliding scale for daycare, as well as an Uber voucher, which you'll reimburse 50% at the end of the month for a rebate at the end of the year, which will be given in the form of another voucher. And that's fresh thinking. You guys ready?
Yeah, well...
I went that, it was like okay for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. I just, I want to play that Tucker Carlson thing. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here. I mean, at first I was a little bit worried about it, but I just think that this is maybe just more of a career thing for him. It's hard for me to see a movement that gets built around the criticism of market capitalism, but Republican daddies are our only hope.
Well, his problem is he doesn't have... Steve Bannon always keeps his pretend like, I was opposed to, I wanted rich people to have more taxes. And that's like his fake, see, I'm the real deal. And Tucker has none of those. He should have at least one or two fake policies that coincide with that argument.
Well, maybe that's coming next.
That could be coming.
It's coming next.
But it's going to be like,
Jeff Bezos should be quartered.
Exactly.
That's for Trump. And we could build a coalition around that.
I do worry that Republicans will adopt more of this rhetoric, even if they're not actually creating any kind of policies that help the working class.
I think that's true. I think it's going to be just mostly rhetorical.
Well, Trump already did that. He
Right.
did the blueprint.
I don't know if that necessarily is a problem for the left or a problem for the right. I mean, this is, in my mind, a totally defensive move. I mean, there was a time where there was no relationship between social conservatives and the sort of market fundamentalist Republicans. I mean, for a long time, right? I mean, prior really until the 60s, late 60s into the 70s. The evangelicals were not terribly associated with the Republican Party. These were not the same programs, right? I mean, I think Eric Levitz wrote had a graph in his response to this where, being against abortion does not necessarily mean that you want tax breaks for oil refineries. These things don't necessarily coincide, but they've been able to cobble together this coalition. And if anything, this breaks it apart, and that's going to further hurt the right. It will infringe perhaps a little bit on the left, but because there are people who...
But that being said, because they won't follow through, right? Like if they got into power and they exploited people's xenophobia and they actually pushed for, say, like a public option on health, like just stipulate that Trump wasn't complete scam artist and bullshit. And what if in the first couple of weeks you had a Muslim ban, you had all of these things that pay to people's fear and bigotry, and you had a stimulus plan, and you had a public option, and you had tax increases for the rich? That would be a pretty terrifying thing to respond
to. The real question is...
And that is happening in some European countries.
Happening in Europe.
Yes. I don't know. And I think when Trump got elected, we were concerned
about that.
That was a big question. What if he comes in with like an actual infrastructure program where we're gonna put billions into train.
Jamie's right. But then, Schumer would
right.
be like, you should be a little bit more polite to Muslims, but this infrastructure bill is way too hard on the Wall Street banks.
Well,
we would be fucked.
It would have been interesting to see what happened, but Donald Trump, of course, turns out not to be that fantasy Donald Trump that I don't know who thought, but I do. I have ideas of who thought that, but we're not going to say their names. But all right. Well, listen. We have a special guest. I want to make sure that we bring him out, and then we're going to open up some questions, and we also have a video of a very disturbing thing that's happening amongst listeners of the show. But before we get there, I want to bring out a very good friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen. He is the voice of the Majority Report, Mr. Jon Benjamin.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So good to be here. How's it going? Hello, gang. Hello.
Looking good.
I'm a funny guy, I guess.
Yeah, it's really...
Yeah.
Looking
John.
sharp.
Yes. Psyched to be here in Brooklyn. Psyched to be on a podcast. I love it. Loving it. What is going on?
No, it's great to see you, I think, for folks, to see you in the flesh as opposed to hear you.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Guess a lot of people don't know what I look like, and has to be seen.
I do know what you look like, John.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I see you quite a bit, so.
True. I saw you probably like a couple days ago, right? We live in the similar.
We live very
same
similar, yeah.
Neighborhood.
I was going to say, have you lost some weight or something?
I have lost weight in the last couple months. I've been eating less, trying to stay healthy, and that's a big. Thank you for pointing that out. I have not eaten there yet. But yeah, no, I am. I've been getting myself into some shape, and I think I've lost like 9 pounds.
Forehead is shrunk a little bit.
Well, I'm not wearing my hat, and I did get a haircut. Actually, this morning, I got a haircut. That was longer on the side.
Yeah.
And I did.
And it was actually shorter in the front, in fact. I mean, I think it was like...
Well, I used to push it back. I think that's probably what you...
No.
That's probably how you're confusing.
I feel like you also not only didn't like push it back, it like almost wasn't there in the front.
All right. I got a haircut this morning, and then I did take a nap, and then I ran over here because I was late, and I, had my cap on, so I did not get a chance to, fix my hair.
I don't think I'm talking about your hair.
I know, but what are you talking about?
Let me see if I can just pull something up here. Will you just pull up a picture of Stephen Miller?
Let's see another.
Sam, this is Sam. Have a little taste.
I just
don't be so harsh.
Reminiscent, and I just want to see if you see something that might.
You mean comment on something?
Yeah. Just comment on a video
politics.
or a picture.
That's why,
politics.
That's why I came.
Picture
to comment on it. I would love to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the Stephen Miller, the guy from the Trump guy.
Right, that's the Trump guy.
Yes.
That's him on a Sunday morning talk show.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah?
we can get a picture of him on a Monday afternoon show.
Oh. Does he look like me or something, or what? Because I don't look like that. But, wow, yeah, I see what he did there. That's pretty embarrassing. Like he fucked with his hair or something. Or he put on fake hair, or is that what it is?
I'm not sure. He could have shaved.
I mean, you got to be an idiot to do something like that if you're... It's like if it's going to be so obvious. I would feel like there's my comment on that.
All right.
I'm not a fan of his politics, obviously, either. But I would say he is one of the more stylish members of the Trump. I mean, if I had to rate them, I like his skinny ties. He's got an 80s ska vibe. And I have to say, like, he looks pretty good, with the fake hair. It'd be pretty vain to do something like that.
You looking to do more on-camera work these days, or?
Yeah, I want to get myself out there, my face out there a little bit more than I usually. Yeah. Excuse me 1 second. I just have to. Sorry, I just had those are powder vitamins that I've been taking. We go to the same doctor, so you must know about this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, Topic. Topic is a powdered vitamin. It just goes through the scalp and absorbs into the bloodstream faster because the scalp actually, you have a nice head of hair, right? As do I. So you can relate. Maybe, yeah. Should I go? Should I leave?
Maybe.
It might be for the best.
It's getting a little bit awkward around here.
Yeah. I'm sorry to make it awkward. Let's show a Tucker Carlson clip.
Oh, yeah.
That's what everybody wants to see. Just show the whole show. Just show a Tucker Carlson show live on the fucking big screen. That's where you want to come on. I mean, I've been to a few Tucker Carlson show viewing parties in my day, and they can get a little crazy.
Did they have as much pedantic interruptions, or do you just watch?
No commercial breaks.
Have some guy with you going, pause it. Pause it. Now, this is really interesting. I just went 10 seconds without pausing it, which I know is a lot.
It was hard. We do actually, John, now that you're here, actually, maybe we should play that little homage that I did for you recently. This is a clip. I got a phone call in the office. I work at the on the studio is where my desk is. And I don't know if folks have heard about these fake IRS calls that people are getting.
This is Agent Smith. We're very upset. You're going to jail, immediately.
I'm going to play 2 minutes of it. It was a bit of an homage to you, John.
Thanks.
Here, this is in between. This is we pick up at the tail end of one person I was talking to, and then I get on the other. And the first guy had introduced himself as Mr. Mark Benjamin. You'll hear him. He doesn't sound like a Mark Benjamin. I don't know what a Mark Benjamin sounds like, but...
probably something like this.
Here, play this.
Just hold on. I will transfer my call to my senior investigation officer. He will handle the further details for you. Just hold on.
Okay. That was Mark.
Yes, thank you for holding the line. Your call has been transferred to one of the senior supervisors. You are speaking with Officer William Hall with the badge number 171063. I believe I'm talking to you, Mr. Jon Benjamin, right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, Mr. Benjamin, my junior officer must have explained to you about the payment, what you owe to the IRS, about your case.
I'm sorry, he didn't say a number. Let me just say, in my own defense, this was clearly a function of a new accountant that I have, and I'm going to fire him immediately.
I understand. See, Mr. Benjamin, this point of time, I believe he had explained to you about your case, the lawsuit which has been filed against you, and about your arrest warrant. Am I correct?
Oh, no, he did not. I had no idea there was an arrest warrant. I obviously... look, I'm a voice on some major cartoons. I can't possibly be arrested. What can I do to get out of this?
See, Mr. Benjamin, exactly the reason why we are getting arrested, why you are getting arrested, is because the reason why you are getting arrested is because when IRS always file a lawsuit against U.S. citizens, they even apply for CP 503 notice. That CP 503 notice is an investigation arrest warrant. Understand?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I philosophically believe that income taxes are theft. So I don't even subscribe to the notion that you have the right to tax me. But I understand I understand I have to comport to your laws.
Right. So the total amount what you owe to the IRS is $5,786.
Well, that for me is virtually nothing. I mean, I'm extremely successful.
All right.
Yeah.
I understand, Mr. Benjamin.
Right.
See, today itself, if IRS gave you a chance to resolve this case, would you be able to come up with this total amount today itself?
Today? Do you need it today?
Yes. Right.
Well, of course. Cash? Would cash be okay?
If you have a cash, we have no problem. But you have to make
How
sure
would
there are
I
certain
get this
conditions.
to you? How would I get you the money?
Mr. Benjamin, you aren't going to send this money to me. You're going to pay this amount to the IRS at the IRS official website.
Okay.
All right.
What's the website?
About the payment Let me explain about the payment procedure that you have to follow.
Let me just be clear, though. Let me just be clear. This will get the charges dropped if I pay the money.
Exactly.
Okay.
Once the payment will be getting accepted by the IRS, that point of time, what the 4 charges has been pressed against you, that charges will be dropped down immediately.
Okay.
Do you know what a PDF files are?
A PDF
copies.
A PDF file? Yes. Is this something I committed?
PDF files, which you can download as a soft copy from the internet.
Oh, I see. Okay. Stop it. All right. Well, we'll. It's an homage.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. No, I thought that you would like that.
I did like it.
When the guy said Mark Benjamin, the only thing I could respond was, "Oh my God, I'm Jon Benjamin."
Well, you didn't say that. Did you say that?
I think I did, but
Must
in the
be related.
earlier in the clip, yeah. But that we'll post on the YouTube channel. But
that's funny.
John, I'm glad you're here. Because
You don't need my. You didn't need me to say that was funny, but that was funny.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. That was very sweet of you.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Anyways.
Just get off the hair already. All right? That bit is long gone.
We're long gone.
Yeah.
It is pretty amazing, though.
Get to the rig.
So, yeah, I'm going to right now.
It's actually terrible because
look.
I've inhaled a lot of black dust. And it's... I'm pouring,
I can see it in your
nose. I'm pouring black mucus out of my nose. I'm like, I have now black lung disease from Topic.
It's vitamins.
Okay, well, John, I'm not sure if you're aware of the walk away movement. I'm sure you spent a lot of time, and I'm sure that you have heard of the saying, "What comes around goes around," and we mocked Brandon Stradden about his walk-away movement. I went on to his YouTube show and
apathetically steamrolled.
I apathetically steamrolled him. And you can be smug and condescending only for so long, apparently at least 52 years. But then one day the bell tolls, and it tolls for you.
This was intense.
I have become recently aware of this video and movement that has started amongst listeners of this program. And by recent, I mean like last night. It was sent to me, and this is some upsetting stuff, but let's play it.
Once upon a time, I was a majority reporter.
I was a majority reporter. I used to be a majority reporter.
Well, let's be honest.
I was actually just watching a libertarian debate playlist right before I made this video, but that's kind of beside the point. The point is, I became a member of the Majority Report, so-called Majority Reporter, because I felt like I'd found a tribe whose values aligned with my own.
I detest callers who use Bluetooth. I detest those who ask, "Is this me? Is this me? Is this me? Sam, is that you? Is this me?"
Yes, callers. It's always you.
I detest callers who go off about nothing in particular for 15 minutes and then say,
"The real reason I called in today was..."
I detest Richard from Ohio.
But he's really funny by accident sometimes, so I wish he would call in more.
Where's he been, actually? Shout out to Germo, by the way.
These are the reasons I became a majority reporter.
And these are the same reasons why now I've got to jump.
For years now, I have listened, even though some of the callers are clearly insane,
illogical, hateful, misguided, ill-informed, un-American, hypocritical, ageist, racist, menacing, callous, ignorant, narrow-minded, and at times
blatantly under the influence of black market prescription painkillers.
For years now, I've sat on hold while Sam became more and more patient with his bad callers, leaving the rest of us to languish behind in silence.
I've been on hold a lot.
The same self-proclaimed victims of bad callers now turning on the good caller community who have attached themselves to the Majority Report to advance their agenda, namely the Chris Lepaco, dissident peasant, and Ronald Reagan.
I have listened as Majority Report has become hypnotized by Judy Gold yelling fuck into her cell phone for an hour before Matthew Film Guy comes on and gives you his shitty Netflix recommendations for an hour. And that's before some shitty caller from Scotland calls in on Fire RTC. You can't hear anything he's saying, but he's trying to give you his shitty Netflix recommendations. Sorry, callers, can't get to all of you today. Anyone who does not comply with their prejudicial recommendations and follow their orders is a racist, a bigot, a Nazi, a white supremacist, homophobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic, misogynistic, and really needs to see Sorry to Bother You. Really, you should check it out sometime. It's pretty good.
Your call-in system is a sham of meritocracy, blatantly biased in favor of anyone who calls from a 210 area code.
They barely get to me. They probably won't get to all of you.
Sorry, callers. I know some of you have been on hold since that whole weird mic thing. The Majority Report now believes that there's no need to jump when someone calls in to discuss AOC's 2032 presidential run, the next local DSA meeting, or if someone's just breathing too heavily into the microphone.
As if they were calling from a track meet.
The Majority Report has now decided that their point of view is the only correct point of view, but they're really eager to hear you out if you can get through. And suppressing Lepaco, Reagan, and dissident peasant is fair to callers who aren't as good as us.
Sorry, callers, we're running out of time. Oh, wait, it's Blake from Arkansas. He thinks we should euthanize your grandmother because her pills are too expensive.
MR has adopted a deleterious belief system happily and without skepticism, separating people into groups based on their area codes and organizing them into camps of bad callers and good callers with hot takes who you'll never get to hear from. They do this so they can bombard us with ads for Casper mattresses and Harry's razors.
JustCoffee.coop. It's Coop, okay?
I can substantiate for the rest of your show if you'd like me to.
They will tell you that they need you. They will tell you that you are only safe under their supervision. They will promise to liberate you from Joe Rogan, and then... nothing. Sorry, callers. I have a dentist appointment at 3. Once upon a time, I was a Majority Reporter.
But MR has changed. And I will no longer be part of a call-in show that contradicts my values of equal opportunity,
brevity, tasteful Patreon plugs,
impatience for bullshit,
and dancing on George H.W. Bush's grave. So I gotta jump.
So I've gotta jump.
So for these reasons and many others that are definitely not ridiculous and very well-founded in reason and logic,
I encourage all the other callers to do the same.
Jump.
Going once, going twice. Gotta jump. Besides, I got better things to do with my time. I got a kid and, wait a minute. Actually, Hey, is this David Packman? Hi, David. This is Barbara's Bush.
A shout out to Chris Lepaco and Ronald Reagan and Dissident Peasant. Apparently there's another version that just went up before showtime, so you can go check that out at the Chris Lepaco's YouTube show. And also check out Dissident Peasants podcast, and of course Redirected, Ronald Reagan's podcast. Both worth listening to, and obviously check out the Chris Lepaco's show on YouTube. All right, listen, we got a little bit of time. I think we got to at least part of what most of the stuff we want to talk about today. So let's take some questions. Again, if you have something about a specific issue in a small city that is in a differing state,
Granular.
please come to the front.
North
and do what we
Dakota.
did first. Go ahead.
What do you think of the Kelly Square redesign in Worcester doing?
Ah, the Kelly Square redesign. John, you want to take this one?
I got a lot of opinions on that. No, I didn't know about it. What?
No, the Wosox. Everything's happening there.
That's where it's going? Oh, okay.
Way to stay in touch with your community, dude.
Yeah.
You're like big Arby's now. You don't even care.
Hey, that's where I discovered Arby's, asshole.
That's the Gold Star Boulevard one, right?
Park
Yeah,
Park Ave. Yeah. Boy,
No,
you
Julie,
know Worcester
I'm not gonna
really
call
well.
you.
Did you
Ladies
just
and
drive
gentlemen.
from Worcester? Did you?
Why can't
you
Julie
did.
ask a question?
Wow.
All right.
Let Julie ask a question.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Let's limit it to Worcester questions if we could.
All right. Julie Cedar, my sister. Everyone wants to ask a question? If there is. Can't hear you. All right, Julie's giving us an update on the Patriots game. Pats are winning. Nice knowing you,
look at
Julie.
all this like
Nice knowing
resentment
you.
of success in this room.
Boo! Amoral blood sport. Boo!
Concussions for the cause.
Bunch of takers, not makers.
Yeah, a bunch of
upset about
friggin',
success.
like this is what they're talking about
It's
in terms of
unbelievable.
like resentment politics and whatnot.
It's like WEI in here.
Yeah. Whoa.
I have an announcement about that.
Hold on for 1 second. We should just tell people the question. Have we settled on a venue or a date for the boxing match, presumably between Michael Brooks and I? And Michael, you have an announcement.
Well, now, due to my own hard work and independent efforts, I have health insurance. So anywhere, anytime, any place.
Wow. I love it.
Samantha.
Oh,
Where? The Park Slope Armory. We'll do it at the Armory right up the road.
I just checked my email, and the sponsorship has just come through. It will be sponsored by Toxic Masculinity.
There we go. Sweet.
Yeah, that sounds
Brought
good
to
to
you
me.
by Toxic Masculinity.
Yeah, I work out there.
Yeah. Did everybody hear the question? Question for NOI Obama. Tim Scott rejecting Steve King's comments.
Tim Scott's so deluded, he's the first black man that came out of the cave. Let's keep it real. Jacob was experimenting on his great-great-grandparents, and that's what created all of you. I see a stunning monochromatic nature of this room. Reflects very poorly on you, Samantha.
Go ahead.
Not a question, but like I have anti-fascist stickers that I wanted to like give to the whole cast.
Hell yeah.
We'll
Yes,
take 'em.
we will take them. Thank you, sir.
Wait, right now? Okay, go.
He's rusting the stage. It's a Jimmy Dore fan. Oh, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I wanted to point out that somewhere in the room, the vendors are here. Where is it?
Hey, isn't this time for you to talk about how much better the produce the show
there
is
you
now,
are.
or something nice like
There's
that?
Matt.
Hey, Matt.
And Dad Bender.
Do you remember the last time when you're just like, there's a certain degree of competence in the show now? Oh, hi, Matt.
Well, look, the moon could always fall into Lake Michigan. And
how many times do you rewatch that debate a month?
I haven't had to, because it's etched in my mind every time I go to bed.
It's
and
4
I close
o'clock.
my eyes.
Right, exactly. No.
Can we have five more minutes? Are we okay? All right. Well, hands up means yeah.
We need that in our office, and no joke. There will be we'll be doing show prep, and something really serious and horrible has happened, like it does every day. And Sam will just be sitting there, and he'll just be like, "Motherfucking Jimmy Dore."
Well, wait a second. That is true as of the first 6 months after that debate, but there was a good 8 to 12 months where you picked up the mantle, and I would just be sitting there just going like this, and you just come in like, fucking pissed at Jimmy Dore.
That's totally true.
And it's completely irrational. I mean, I don't think that Jimmy Dore is responsible for Donald Trump's election, but what we do, we can't delude ourselves that we're responsible for anything. All we can do is just work in our limited space and hope that some butterfly wings, we can push a little bit of a butterfly wing velocity.
Tortured analogy, devil.
Well, and that's why I think within our space, it gets very frustrating to see that type of stupidity and toxicity, because we do fish in the same waters, and you don't want somebody dumping, Drano into your stream.
Dead ass.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/TMBS is what you were trying to say, right? I got you.
No, I mean, I think that, obviously, I think that's true. It's tough when you're in a room and, every day to see outside of it. But yes, people should be doing that. I mean, the key to sort of maintaining the energy that exists now is to build real world relationships in as broad a fashion from yourself as possible. Everybody has their own limitations, obviously, but push yourself to do that. And it's really the only way to sustain this, because at one point Donald Trump will be gone, and the future is going to belong to the people who stay engaged. And a lot of times it's them. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, people say we preach to the choir, but we're also arming the choir with knowledge, right?
That's true. Yes, I'm fully in favor. Wait, does he have something to say?
Competition would start kicking in, and between UPS and FedEx and Amazon and drones and blah, 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 and DHL.
Trastero.
I love that blah, blah, blah delivery service. It's the one I want to use.
Go ahead. For public works alone, no, I would want DACA. I mean, I just don't think. Look, the $5 billion for the wall is a meaningless gesture, except for how it's going to be heard by a huge portion of Americans and how it's going to be seen around the world. I mean, it's symbolic, and I am just not
a wind down of the white family.
I feel like at one point we're going to be able to get that. If I had to guess at what $50 billion worth of public works with a Republican Senate and a Republican president look like, it looks like a whole lot of privatization to me. I want a path to citizenship so that real people can really directly benefit. I will say Nancy Pelosi has not asked me. So.
And they can stop agreeing with Republicans that we need more border security while they're at it.
Oh.
Hell yeah.
Do you have tickets to something else?
Yeah, I don't want him there.
We are planning an Antifada live show, maybe?
Now we're talking.
There you go. Take him somewhere else and keep him out, get him back home early because he gets really grouchy.
He gets very grouchy. It's an evening show. That's a problem.
The show starts at 7.
Yeah, that's late.
My back hurts.
Oh, my God. All right, well, let's just an applause for that. That's one I'm going to show my kids when they're old enough to get it, because I got blue flame coming out of my eyes. All right, two more questions. Go ahead.
Assuming you could only pick one, Libertarian 2020 run or challenging Chuck Schumer in 2022?
Well, the beauty is I can pick both. So my Libertarian run could set me up pretty well for... All right, one more question. Go ahead.
How do you talk to a libertarian?
How do you talk to a hardcore libertarian?
With YouTube.
Yeah. Well, you could start them with our playlist on libertarians, but I think I think the idea, the easiest thing for you to ask your friends is just sort of, how did they get to where, how are you talking to them? If you're talking to them on the phone, remind them that it was a government that built a lot of that infrastructure. If you see them in person, remind them they took the subway to go and talk to you, or they drove on a road that was built by a government. And that's where I would start, and then ask them how they'd like to enjoy their dinner without an FDA. They may have the opportunity soon, but...
I would start with Noam Chomsky. Always a good place. If you're trying to make someone go from a right libertarian to left libertarian, right? Remind him that the primary thing making most people unfree is not the government, it's capitalism and their jobs and their bosses. And then, maybe bring it a little bit into Sam's realm, in that to the degree that state power deserves to exist, it's to guarantee economic freedom as well as political freedom.
Unless he makes at least like $0.5 million a year and he's a libertarian, he's a cuck.
Wage cuck.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for coming out. You guys are the best. For the past week, I was like, why are we doing this? God, why are we doing this? It's so disruptive to be on a Sunday and not a regular weekday, and I'm out of my habit, and then I see all you guys out here, and it reminds me why I wanted to do it again. So thanks so much for coming. We'll be out front in just a minute. We got some posters and stickers and magnets. If you see one of us, we got some stickers and magnets for free, and we got some posters and T-shirts for sale. And I think we have 5 grocery bags from the last time we did this. Thanks again for coming. Really appreciate it. Thank you to Jamie and Michael and to Jon Benjamin and to Matt. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the PodFest.
Brendan.
And to Brendan in the back. Brendan. Michael's has a show, same place in 2 weeks. Check it out. All right, folks. See you on Monday.
See you in the fun app.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the man